So what I'm doing now is I'm beginning to sand the body and the neck. As I'd mentioned before, the body is in really good shape. So I'm just sanding it down, closer inspection to make sure that there aren't anything that needs to be corrected or fixed. Overall, I shouldn't have to do too much sanding. I still will. I'll take this up really to a high grit before I stain it. I believe I'm going to stain this brown and then sand it back. That should give it some decent highlights. I put some naphtha on the body just to get an idea as to what it's going to look like after, if I was to just throw some clear on. A little bit too yellow and white for me. And with the neck, what I do with all my necks is I'll go back through and I will round off the entire fretboard. So we've got nice rolled edges, like you would have with an American Fender neck. I think it's really important to do that. Then I'll go back through and with my files and make sure that the fret ends are really nice and smooth and comfortable for your fingers. Once I'm done, taking care of rounding off the edges, then we'll get this guy shaped and sanded down. So that's next. Probably should be a few hours worth of sanding. It always is. If you want to do it right, take your time. Okay, now that I've rounded off the edges of the fretboard, what I like to do next is take a razor blade. I'll go through and I'll smooth this out. This is the same as using a scraper. So whenever I'm doing the body, I'll sand it down, and then the last thing I'll do is I'll hit it with the scraper, and that really makes the grain pop. That's better than actually a higher grit sandpaper. So I'll do this in between all of the frets. That makes it really nice and level and makes everything pop a lot. It's really nice to do that for the rosewood fretboards. Smooths it out a bit, and whenever you put your oil on there, just really makes everything pop out. Whenever I sand a guitar, I find really the difference in coming out with a good product versus mediocre are the tools that you use. I found the Abranet sanding discs, to be outstanding. If you watch Highline Guitars videos, Chris uses these discs. That's where I found them, and I picked these up at my local Rockler. They've got Velcro backs that fit on your orbital sander, and they don't leave a lot of little scratch marks that you get from a traditional sandpaper or sanding discs. In addition to that, they sell these sanding blocks that the Abranet fits on, so you can get a flat surface to sand. And they've got the sanding pad. This is flexible, fits on your hands. The thing is amazing. So I picked those up. Whenever I go to finish for a final quote sanding, I'll use a cabinet scraper. That really makes the grain pop out, gives you a really perfectly smooth surface. So this side I hit with the cabinet scraper. You can see the grain, how it just pops out on that. This side I hit quickly with the sandpaper, and it doesn't look the same at all. So what I'll do now is I'll hit this with the cabinet scraper. You can see the difference. Again, the tools mean everything. You could take a $109 kit and you can turn that into something that looks and plays as good as a $1,500 guitar. Really, take your time, use the right tools for the right job. Makes all the difference in the world. So I've completed scraping. I used a razor blade to get in the horn. And whenever I stood the body up on its side to admire my work, and it fell over and landed on top of the neck, the headstock. So I don't know if you can see right here, got a little dent now. So that would sand out normally, not really a big deal. But what I'm going to do is attempt to pull that out using my iron. So what I'll do is I'll put a cloth or some shop towels down over top of this, blast it with some steam, and hopefully that'll raise that grain and that wood up, make it swell a bit. Should fix that. Then we'll hit it with some sandpaper and scrape it again. But just one of those things that takes up time, and it happens every single build. At least it does to me. But this is a little trick as to how to get rid of little dents and bumps like that. Okay, well, I just put my shop towel down, did my iron, steamed it a little bit, and as you can see, the dent is gone. So just a little trick there as to how to fix things like that to come up. That is a much better way of fixing that than trying to sand that down. If you go to sand that down, you're going to have a little bump right there. It won't be level. So, afterward, I just need to hit it with some sandpaper real quick because now the grain is raised. And I'll hit it again with my cabinet scraper. So problem solved. Boom. All right, now we are ready to shape the headstock. So what I did is I downloaded a template, made sure this was pretty close to real size. And I traced that out on my headstock. So the point here is to make a template out of the MDF. I usually make my templates out of the MDF. Hit this on my scroll saw. Make sure you sand the edges down really good so that there's no hard edges. Because whenever you hit that with your router, all those edges will convey over. So that's just additional sanding and work you're going to have to do. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my scroll saw. Normally I would use my bandsaw, but my bandsaw doubles duty as my buffer. So I'm going to use my scroll saw. The idea is to get not on the line, but close to the line. We'll cut that off. I'll double side tape this to the back of the headstock and then hit that with my flush bit router. And I should have hopefully, what looks like a Telecaster headstock. This is your opportunity to customize this, make it however you want. I normally buy my necks, not normally, I always buy my necks with the headstock already cut out. It's kind of nice to do a custom thing if you want, but I decided to do a template. I think a template's always better because it's repeatable and you've got, that's just nice and flush. So it's less work you're going to have to do later. You don't have to do that, but it'll save yourself some sanding and work. Okay, we've got the basic shape of the headstock cut out. As you can see, kind of close to my lines, but not on the line. That gives me enough room to use the router to shape that properly. Whenever I do this on the router, I'm going to take off a little bit at a time. If you do too much, then you risk the chance of biting a whole bunch out or taking chunks out or burning the wood. So we don't want to do any of that. So next, double stick tape this to the headstock and hit the router. The template is now affixed to the back of the headstock, and I'm going to run it through here and we'll get this headstock shaped. Like I said, I'm going to take out small pieces. Always go in this direction. Hopefully we don't have any chunk or tear out. So that's the goal. We'll show you whenever we're done. Okay, we've got the headstock completed, and it looks pretty good. No complaints. There's a little bit of extra sanding I had to do and shaping, but I think it turned out nice. Rolled the edges really nice, so it's nice and smooth. So next up is to test fit the tuning machines. You always want to do that before you do the finish. Otherwise, if you have to ream it out or anything, you risk messing up your finish. So I'll do this now, and if any additional work needs to be done, I'll do that. And then I'll get to work on the frets. So the long, hard road to get this neck completed is probably 3/4 of the way completed, which is nice. And as soon as I get the bridge, as soon as I receive the bridge for this, I'll route out the bridge cavity a little bit more so we can make sure that's nice and flush. Widen this a little bit so we can get our CTS pots in. We're trucking right along. Right, trying to do the test fit for the tuning machines, and it's a fail. The bushings don't fit. It's a little bit too loose. So that'll just pop right out. It should be a pretty snug fit. It's not. So I'll have to go online and buy the 10mm bushings, which I probably should have known and thought about ahead of time. I thought I already had bushings, but apparently not. So something to consider whenever you purchase any kit. Usually the holes are 10mm. If you buy Fender parts or Goto, they're usually a little bit smaller. So you have to buy the different size bushings. To give the body a little bit of pop to it, so it's not all white, I use Crystalax tint or dye, whatever you call this, stain. So you mix it with their clear gel stain, and you put a little bit of the stain in there, mix it up, and you apply it with a little rag. So I did that, and this is what we have. So we went from having, primarily a white body to just a really nice looking stain right there. You can see that it's still, you kind of get the pop there, how the grain pops a bit. Looks good. Normally what I do is do black and then sand that back and then apply another color. I didn't do that this time. I wanted it to be just really one shade. You can see where the different pieces of wood, but I think that looks nice. I don't have an issue with that at all. I think it looks really cool. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Next up, I'm going to do a quick application of True Oil on the neck. I like to do True Oil. Again, it makes all that grain pop, and once it cures, you can add lacquer over it or whatever you want to do. So I'm going to do that before I get doing more work on it. I also painted the inside of the truss rod adjustment. So that's all good. I think we're ready to move along to this. Okay, so I did a light brown stain on the body. You can see it turned out really nice. I love that. That is exactly what I was going for. And I let that dry. And now I have, I put True Oil on it. So I loaded up with True Oil so it penetrates really well. I like to use True Oil to seal the guitar when possible. When you have decent wood grain and stuff, I think it really makes it pop, and I like the little bit of a yellow tint that it gives it. So that's what we have. You can see really nice wood. I mean, this is again, it comes from the kit. So you can see the contrast from, what color the wood was to begin with and what we have now. I also hit the the neck. I do the same thing with the neck with the True Oil as a sealer. So it really just made that grain pop on there. I think it looks great. That doesn't look like a guitar kit neck. At least in my mind it doesn't. I've bought, I paid some money for necks before. So this isn't bad at all. That's what you get. Pretty nice.